I was the last one called. The lawyer didn't even say my name properly, just glanced at me like I was some distant cousin instead of the daughter who sat beside my dad every single day while he died. My brother Caleb grinned like he'd just won the lottery, because of course he had. He got the lake house, our childhood home, the one Dad used to call his legacy. Elise squealed when she got Mom's jewelry collection. And the Paris apartment. She said, "Oh my God, this is so her." Like she hadn't ignored Mom's last 3 voicemails. Then it was my turn. The lawyer barely looked at me. Just pointed to a chair in the corner. There, leaning against it like someone had left it by mistake, was an old painting. An oil painting of a faded sailboat. The one that hung in the guest bathroom for years. The one no one ever talked about. No frame. No note. Not even a box. Just that. The lawyer muttered, "I'm sure it has sentimental value." Sentimental value? They got homes, heirlooms, entire countries. I got mildew art from the toilet wall. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just nodded, picked it up, and left. As I walked past Caleb, he leaned in and whispered, "Guess that's what you get for being the quiet one." And Elise? She gave me that look, the one she's perfected over the years. The fake smile, pity eyes combo. "Oh, honey," she said, like I was a stray dog someone forgot to put down. I didn't even blink, just kept walking. But inside, I felt cold, not shocked, not really. Just hollow. This wasn't new. I've always been the afterthought, the third child, the quiet one. The one who stayed behind during vacations to watch the dog. The one who got forgotten at the airport when I was 11, and when they remembered, they laughed. "You're so independent," Mom used to say, like that excused everything. "You never needed much," Dad said once, as if that meant I didn't deserve anything. But still, a painting. I sat in my car with it on my lap, staring at the chipped canvas, wondering if this was some kind of final joke. Maybe it was worth something. Maybe it was rare. Or maybe, more likely, it was just the closest thing to garbage they could find that still felt meaningful. Was about to toss it in the trunk when I noticed something weird. The back of it wasn't smooth. There was a thin wooden panel, slightly raised, like it had been glued on in a hurry. I ran my fingers along the edge. It wiggled. I pried it up, heart racing for reasons I couldn't explain. And there, tucked behind the panel, was a folded slip of paper. My hands shook as I opened. It numbers. A long, strange string of numbers. Not a phone number, not a birthday. It looked almost like a bank account. I stared at it, my breath catching in my throat. It didn't make sense. Why would Dad hide this? And why give it to me? For a second, I thought it was a mistake. That maybe I wasn't supposed to get the painting at all. That someone had switched things by accident. But then I remembered something. About a year before he passed, Dad had called me into his study. He handed me a notebook, said, "This is for when you're ready." I opened it later, and it was completely blank. No explanation. Just blank. I never asked him what he meant. And now, here I was, staring at this dusty old painting like it was the last puzzle piece of a story I didn't even know I'd been living. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the parking lot to empty. Long enough for my fingers to go numb. This whole time, I thought they'd left me with nothing. But maybe, just maybe, they left me everything. I should have known. Something was off. Maybe not in the moment. But looking back now, the signs were everywhere. I was always the one picking up after them. Not just their messes, but their moods. The forgotten birthday. The missed calls. The way Mom would smile at Caleb like he'd hung the stars, then glance at me like I'd wandered in from the wrong house. Elise was the star. Blonde, brilliant, always center stage. Caleb was the future, the name carrier. Dad's right hand. And me? I was the shadow in the corner. Quiet, useful, easy to forget. But I never complained. Not really. I convinced myself that their love just looked different. That maybe I didn't need as much. That being the strong one meant going without. That was the first lie I swallowed. Because love doesn't come with conditions that erase you. And when Dad got sick, it all came into focus. Sharp, ugly. I was the one who stayed. Who fed him, bathed him, held his hand when he couldn't hold anything else. I watched his skin change colors. I changed his oxygen tanks. I was there. Elise came once, wore Chanel, took a photo, left before dessert. Caleb came when the lawyer needed his signature. Said it was too hard to see Dad that way, and still, somehow they were the ones Dad whispered to when he thought I wasn't listening. They were the ones called into closed rooms. I was always sent to grab coffee or give them a minute. Even as he faded, I was the one waiting in the hallway, like a ghost. And I accepted it, because that's what I'd always done. Until now. Until I found the numbers behind the painting, and everything started to twist. Because suddenly, all those little moments I brushed off, they started flashing back with new meaning, like that notebook. A few months before he passed, Dad had handed it to me, shaking, quiet. He said, "For your sketches." I hadn't drawn in years, not since college. I smiled and said thank you. Tried to keep my voice steady. When I opened it later, it was completely blank. I thought he was confused. Maybe slipping. But now I wonder if that notebook wasn't empty at all. Maybe it was waiting to be filled. Maybe he was saying something without saying it. Because that painting, and the numbers hidden inside it, they didn't feel random. They felt deliberate. Like a code only I was meant to see. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt chosen. Not by them. Not by the people who always pushed me to the edge. But by him. And that confused me. Because if he loved me enough to hide something this big, why didn't he ever show it? Why didn't he defend me when Elise mocked my clothes? Or when Caleb told everyone I dropped out of art school because I couldn't handle it? Why did he let them laugh when I sat alone at every family dinner? Maybe he thought he was protecting me. Maybe he was ashamed. Or maybe he knew they would never let me have anything unless he gave it to me in secret. That thought broke something open inside me. Back then, after the will reading, I'd gone home and sobbed. Deep, ugly cries I didn't want anyone to see. I thought I'd been forgotten, punished. I thought maybe I deserved it, because that's what they made me believe, that I was difficult, ungrateful, too quiet, too sensitive. They twisted every truth, until I couldn't trust my own gut. I remember once in high school, Elise stole my painting, the one I'd worked on for weeks. She entered it into a local contest under her name, and won. When I told Mom, she said, "You should be flattered. You inspired her." Inspired her? She stole from me. And got praised for it. And that was the pattern. Over and over, Elise would lie. Caleb would manipulate. And somehow, I was always the one who needed to calm down. Be more understanding. Stop making waves. I bent so much for them. I forgot what standing felt like. But this time, I wasn't bending. This time, I had a thread in my hand. and I was ready to pull. Because what if they weren't just cruel? What if they were hiding something from me? What if that account, those numbers behind the sailboat painting, wasn't a mistake? What if it was the one honest thing Dad ever left me? They raised me to believe I didn't matter. But what if I wasn't overlooked? What if I was hidden? For a reason, I pulled out the slip of paper again and stared at it like it might blink back. Something deep in my gut whispered, "This is bigger than you think." And I was done being afraid of the truth. I needed to know what those numbers meant, even if it shattered everything I thought I knew. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the numbers on that slip of paper, trying to make sense of them. They weren't a phone number, not a date, not coordinates, but they meant something. I could feel it. The next morning, I did what I always do when I hit a wall. I called Jason. We hadn't talked in years. He was an ex from college, and let's just say we ended on uneven terms. But he owed me. And he worked in digital security now, cyber forensics or something equally nerdy but useful. I texted him a picture of the numbers with one line. "Can you trace this?" 10 minutes later, he called. "Where did you get this?" I hesitated. "Why?" "Because it's linked to an offshore trust account." I went still. "Offshore?" "Yeah," he said. "Private, hidden, and massive." I blinked. Massive, like 8 figures. Maybe more. I laughed. I couldn't help it. "You're telling me that behind a cracked painting from my parents' bathroom is a fortune?" Jason didn't laugh. "You may want to watch your back." The line went quiet. I didn't even have time to process it before my phone buzzed again. Elise. I hadn't heard from her in days, not since the will reading. And now suddenly she was calling. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey," she said. "All sugar. You got the painting, right?" I kept my voice flat. "Why?" "Oh, it's just sentimental, you know? Dad loved it. We think it should stay in the family. Mind if I swing by and grab it?" She sounded casual. Too casual. Something clicked. She knew. I leaned into the act. "Oh, that old thing? I think I left it in the garage. Or maybe it's still in my trunk. Honestly, I forgot about it." She paused. "Don't throw it out, okay? Please. It was Dad's favorite." Liar. Dad hated that painting. He once said it reminded him of unfinished things. But I didn't say that. I just said, "Sure," and hung up. And then I locked every door in my house. Because suddenly this wasn't about a painting. This was about control, power, and a secret they didn't want me to have. I pulled the numbers back out, looked closer, and then I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The account wasn't in any of our names. Not Caleb's, not Elise's, not even mine. It was under a pen name, a weird old alias I hadn't used since I was 10, when I used to write little stories and sign them as Tessa Blue. Only one person ever knew that name. Dad. And that's when I realized he'd left it for me, but not the me they knew. He left it for the version of me he knew, the one who wrote, who dreamed, who still believed in something beyond inheritance and dinner parties. I wasn't just a leftover in his plan. I was the plan. And they had no idea. The next day, Caleb showed up at my apartment. Didn't call, didn't text, just knocked once. Then stood in the doorway like he owned the place. "Hey," he said flatly. "We need to talk." I didn't flinch. "Do we?" He walked past me without asking. Straight into the living room. Arms crossed, jaw tight. "You know about it, don't you?" I tilted my head. "About what?" The account. There it was. No more pretending. I folded my arms. Interesting. I thought you didn't care what Dad left me. He scoffed. Don't play dumb. He wouldn't have given that kind of money to you. Not after everything. I narrowed my eyes. Everything? You mean when I gave up my job to take care of him? When you were partying in Mykonos and texting me to check if the Wi-Fi was still working at the lake house? His face twitched. And then, just like that, the charm dropped. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. Give me the painting. I blinked. Excuse me? He leaned in. You don't know what you're doing. That account, those assets, they're not for you. You were just the hiding place. I let that sit for a moment. Then I laughed, because for years, that's exactly how they treated me. Like a storage unit for their mess, a placeholder, a body in a chair. But this time, I wasn't the hiding place. I was the key. I met his stare, cold and clear. You want the painting? I asked. Too bad. His jaw clenched. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I smiled. You have no idea how hard things are about to get. Because what he didn't know was that the account was already locked. Biometric access only. And I had one more surprise waiting for both of them. He thought he was walking into my apartment to take something back. But what he walked into was a war he'd already lost. Because things were already messy. Just not for me. I played along. Oh, Caleb. Of course, I'll find it for you. He nodded like he'd already won, like I was too soft to fight back. Then he grunted something about being late for a meeting and walked out. I watched the door close behind him and didn't move for a full minute. Then I smiled. Not the kind you show people. The kind you feel in your bones when you finally stop pretending. An hour later, Elise texted me. Hey. Sorry about earlier. Let's talk. Of course she wanted to talk. Of course she was suddenly sweet. I told her I was free. Maybe sometime next week. She sent a heart emoji. I didn't respond. Instead, I messaged Jason. Lock it all down. No transfers, no movement. My access only. Biometric. He replied, already done. And just like that, the game shifted. They still thought they were hunting me, but I'd already built the trap. Because the trust? It wasn't just some lucky jackpot I stumbled into. It was a fortress. A massive holding fund Dad created years ago, hidden under shell. Companies buried in paperwork, masked through so many legal layers that even I had to sit with Jason for hours just to understand it. And what it held was everything. Patents, stocks, real estate. Even the deed to the lake house Caleb thought he owned, all of it tucked inside a shell, with my name at the center. But here's the part that stopped me cold. Buried deep in the documents was a clause. If anything ever happened to me, if I died, vanished, or lost capacity, the entire trust would default to charity, every last dollar. Not to Elise. Not to Caleb, me, or no one. It wasn't just wealth. It was a message. Dad knew. He knew what they were, what they'd become. And for the first time in my life, he protected me in a way they couldn't touch. So I made my move. I invited them both to dinner, told them I wanted peace, closure, a way to honor Dad together. They showed up like they were arriving on a red carpet. Caleb wore a designer suit, fake casual, like always. Elise came in head to toe beige, all soft tones and tight smiles. They brought wine. They brought charm. They thought this was a reunion. They thought I was still the girl who'd shrink into her seat and say thank you for scraps. They were wrong. Over dessert, I handed them each an envelope. From Dad, I said. Thought you'd want to read these. Caleb ripped his open. Elise hesitated. Inside were 2 letters, one for each of them, written in Dad's own handwriting. Jason had helped me verify the signatures. They were real, dated, notarized. Dad had written them before his final decline, and they didn't hold back. He told Caleb he'd watched him manipulate, lie, steal, that he was tired of seeing his legacy treated like a game. He told Elise he loved her, but could no longer ignore her cruelty, that he was giving his trust, his true trust, to someone who had earned it in silence. Me. They both sat frozen. Elise went pale. Her wine glass trembled. Caleb stared at the letter like it was poison. Then he snapped. "You forged this," he said. "You think we're that stupid?" I didn't blink. Just slid another folder across the table. "Notarized," I said. "Dated 5 years ago. Publicly filed." He flipped through the pages. His jaw tightened with every line. Elise whispered, "He really left you everything?" I nodded. No loopholes, no appeals. Jason had already made sure of that. Caleb stood, up so fast his chair screeched. "You'll regret this." I looked him dead in the eye. "No, you will." The next morning, the press release dropped. Forgotten daughter inherits billion-dollar trust. Siblings disinherited amid allegations of greed. It went viral within hours. Elise lost her modeling contract before lunch. Her brand deals pulled out. The soft pink aesthetic didn't hold up under public scrutiny. Caleb's company? Investors pulled out the moment the trust's holdings were revealed. Turns out a lot of his assets were borrowed from Dad's umbrella funds, and when those vanished, so did his empire. And me? I launched something new, something mine. The Tessa, Blue Art Therapy Foundation. Named after the pen name only Dad and I had shared. For kids like me, quiet ones, forgotten ones. Ones who didn't get the shiny praise but carried all the weight. That was Dad's dream. He used to talk about it when he thought no one was listening. But I was always listening. I used their noise as a soundtrack. And now, I'd turned it into fuel. As they spiraled, I stood tall. They had called me a shadow. But now the shadow had become the storm. They don't call anymore. Not that I'd answer if they did. Elise tried to sue, dragged my name into headlines, claimed I manipulated Dad in his final days. But the will was airtight. So was the trust. Jason made sure of that. The lawsuit collapsed within weeks. Caleb, he vanished to Europe. No goodbye, no press statement, just gone. Last I heard, he tried selling off art that wasn't even his. Got exposed at some gallery auction in Berlin. Fitting, honestly. The media moved on. The world always does. But I didn't. Not right away. I needed quiet. So I left the city, traded. The noise for ocean air and a house where the walls didn't echo anyone else's name. No more forced smiles. No more pretending to be grateful for crumbs. Just me. And the painting. I kept it. It hangs in my living room now. The same cracked canvas. The same dull sailboat drifting across a sea of grays and blues. But it feels different. Back then, it was a symbol of insult. A slap. The proof that I was worth less than everyone else. Now I see it for what it really was. A map, a message, a mirror. It was never just a painting. It was a door. One only I was meant to open. Because that's the thing about being invisible for so long. Eventually, you stop looking for validation in other people's eyes. You start seeing the truth in your own. I remember sitting in my new place one morning, sunlight coming through the window, and thinking, he saw me, my father, for all his silence, for all the things he never said out loud. He saw me, not as a failure, not as an afterthought, as someone strong, quietly powerful, worthy of carrying something he couldn't trust with anyone else. That realization cracked something open in me. So, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out the sketchbook, the one he gave me before he passed. Still blank. All those pages. Still waiting. I almost closed it again. But something made me flip to the very back. And there, taped to the inside cover, was a small folded note. 5 words. They'll see what you're worth when you stop trying to prove it. I stared at it until the words blurred. Then I cried. Hard. Not because I was broken, but because something finally healed. I'd spent my entire life trying to be enough for people who were never capable of loving me the way I needed. Trying to fit into a version of family where I was always on the edge of the photo, cropped out before the picture even printed. But I'm not there anymore. I don't need to be. So I picked up a pencil, and I drew. Not because I had to. Not to earn love. Not to chase legacy, but because it made me feel whole. And for the first time in a long, long time, that was enough. I built something with what he left me. Not just the money, the meaning. The foundation I started is growing. We offer free art therapy programs for kids who've been silenced, forgotten, pushed aside like I was. We teach them to tell their own stories, and sometimes when I'm in the studio, a little girl will hand me a picture she drew. Messy lines, bold colors, and she'll say, "Is it good?" And I always say the same thing. It's yours. That makes it powerful. I wish someone had said that to me when I was her age, but maybe I wouldn't have believed it back then. Now I live it. Every single day. My siblings got what they thought they wanted. Money, recognition, applause. But it slipped through their fingers the moment the mask cracked. And me? I got something deeper. A way out. A way up. A reason to believe that I was never worthless after all.